In a world hungry for secret knowledge, steam engines, crowded streets, circus wagons, patent medicine shows, newspaper stands screaming about Freud, anarchists, prophets, and war. The early 1900s were an age of psychological earthquakes. Freud was prying open the human mind like a locked cabinet, exposing the dreams, traumas, and drives people pretended they didn't have. Eugenics was rising as a fashionable ideology, genteel on the surface, brutal at its core, promising a scientific shortcut to a better breed of man. And behind the curtain, the architects of mass persuasion, Edward Bernays and Gustave Le Bon, were discovering ways to herd public opinion like cattle with the right symbols, fears, and fantasies. It was a world looking for meaning, a world looking for magic, a world perfectly primed for the rise of Manly Palmer Hall. Chapter 1. A childhood built from myth and absence. Before he became the most influential occult philosopher in American history, Manly Palmer Hall was a child shaped by abandonment, imagination, and a grandmother who lived like a character from a Victorian adventure novel. Hall liked to claim he survived one of the first caesarean births ever performed in Ontario, a dramatic tale of a baby declared dead, placed in a basket, then resurrected with a howl from beyond. A colourful story, but not true. The real records show a normal delivery assisted by Dr. William Dixon Scott in 1901, with no surgery and a modest hospital bill of $20. In reality, the drama came later. His father, William S. Hall, a dentist living in a posh hotel, walked out when Manly was 3 and never returned. That abandonment carved an empty space inside him, a space he would eventually try to refill with the myths, symbols, and cosmic structures of every ancient tradition he could get his hands on. His mother fled north to the Alaskan goldfields, chasing fortune as a chiropractic healer. Young Manly was left with his grandmother, Florence Palmer, a sharp, cultured widow determined to wander America like an aristocratic nomad. Together they drifted: Sioux Falls, San Francisco, Santa Rosa, San Diego, Germantown, Chicago, never more than 6 months in one place. This wasn't stability. It was psychological kindling, but it was also a living education. A boy raised on Native American dances, Buffalo Bill spectacles, political rallies, and circus pageantry. A boy reading Victor Hugo by lamplight, while other first graders struggled to name the alphabet. Florence Palmer curated artifacts for fun. Tiny curios from their travels, laid out like museum exhibits for guests. The young Manly absorbed this ritual, the dramatic reveal of sacred objects, the quiet authority of a storyteller who knows more than her audience. Later, this would become his brand. In 1914, Florence moved them into a genteel boarding house 3 blocks from the White House. Among the tenants was Senora Carenza, a burn healer who whispered incantations invoking the 3 wise men to cure blistered flesh. Hall never forgot the moment she allowed him to translate her charm into English. The supernatural wasn't out there. It lived in the next room over. Chapter 2. New York, Death, and the End of Ordinary Life. In 1917, the pair moved to New York, where the teenage Hall briefly lived as a normal young man. A clerk in the financial district, paid $30 a month, listening to corporate sermons about loyalty and respectable living. Then came the turning point. His grandmother died suddenly. The only stable presence in his life, gone. And with that, the last tether to conventional society snapped. Chapter 3. The occult boom of Los Angeles and the birth of a mystic. Hall, now 18, boarded a train to Los Angeles in 1919 to reunite with the mother who had abandoned him. He arrived not in a city, but in a metaphysical gold rush. Southern California was booming with Rosicrucians, Theosophists, Vedantists, spiritual healers, yogis, astrologers, and occultists building temples in the desert sun. It was a spiritual marketplace where every creed, ancient or improvised, set up shop. Los Angeles wasn't just Hollywood. It was a laboratory for new religions. Philip Jenkins wasn't exaggerating when he wrote that Hollywood itself was built on occult foundations. The meeting that changed everything. Hall wandered into a storefront offering phrenology, the pseudoscience of mapping personality through bumps on the skull. Inside sat Sidney J. Brownson, an elderly, kindly Civil War veteran with a mind full of mystical ideas and medical oddities. Hall became his disciple. This was the ignition spark. Brownson didn't just teach Hall, he groomed him. He turned a fatherless, drifting young man into a confident lecturer who could command a room as if born for a higher purpose. Hall later admitted that everything in his early development came from Brownson. Chapter 4. Freud, Eugenics, and the Birth of Modern Propaganda. To understand Hall's rise, you have to understand the forces shaping the American psyche during the 1920s. Hall didn't exist in a vacuum. He thrived because his era was mentally unanchored. Freud had detonated a psychological bomb beneath Western civilization. Suddenly, dreams meant something. Childhood meant everything. Sexual desire was the secret engine of life. The polite world was in crisis. Freud revealed a shadow self people didn't know how to confront, and many didn't want to. They sought alternate explanations, mythic ones. They wanted a symbolic map of existence that made the unconscious feel like destiny rather than pathology. Hall gave them that. He interpreted myths the way Freud interpreted dreams. Only Hall's versions were grander, cosmic, comforting, and ordered. During this period, the fashionable elite embraced eugenics as enlightened policy. Hall himself absorbed much of this worldview. He promoted birth control to prevent the proliferation of those he considered mentally and physically unfit, believing that reincarnating souls deserved bodies of a fine, organic quality. This wasn't fringe thinking, it was mainstream among both scientists and mystics. He even adopted theosophical racial doctrines, Lemurian, Atlantean, Aryan cycles, linking moral traits to imagined prehistoric lineages. Hall didn't invent these ideas. He inherited them from Blavatsky, Jung, and the racial metaphysics of the 19th century. Bernays and Le Bon, the engineers of groupthink. Just as Hall was sharpening his public voice, another revolution struck: mass persuasion. Gustave Le Bon had revealed how crowds behave irrationally, emotionally, and symbolically, like primitive tribes wearing suits. Edward Bernays, Freud's own nephew, turned those insights into a weaponized art: public relations. Bernays taught corporations, governments, and newspapers how to shape opinions using archetypes, myths, and emotional triggers. Hall sensed the same thing from a different angle. People didn't think logically, they thought symbolically. The world was becoming a stage of psychological manipulation. And in that world, a symbolic interpreter, a mythic philosopher, could become a cultural force. Chapter 5. The Rise of a Young Prophet. By age 20, Hall was preaching in downtown Los Angeles to packed houses. Women filled most of the seats, drawn to his gentle, androgynous presence and his booming intellect. Reporters noted his broad shoulders and bobbed hair, marveling at this strange mix of masculine mass and feminine softness. He spoke with a calm confidence that suggested secret knowledge. He deciphered ancient symbols as casually as reading street signs. He concluded each lecture abruptly, like a magician snapping shut a box. Well, that's about all for today, folks. He was becoming a phenomenon. Chapter 6. The Masterpiece That Changed Everything. Between lectures, Hall began writing the book that would permanently carve his name into Western esoteric history, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. The Big Book. It was enormous, encyclopedic, lavish, and impossibly ambitious. Myths, symbols, gods, secret societies, geometry, alchemy, Kabbalah, magic, and metaphysics, all woven together in a single tapestry. He dictated chapters for hours each day until the manuscript reached monumental scale. The cost to produce it? $150,000 in 1920s money, an astronomical sum. He wasn't even 28. Yet the book sold out its first editions before they were printed and launched him into the national spotlight. He had become the philosopher king of the American metaphysical movement almost overnight. Chapter 7. Los Angeles, the city of glamour and ghosts. Los Angeles, palm-lined boulevards, movie studios booming, billboards screaming about new stars. Hall's rise in Los Angeles wasn't just a coincidence of geography. It was alchemy. The city was a cauldron of ambition and spiritual hunger. Actors feared obscurity more than death. Writers wanted shortcuts to genius. Directors looked for guidance in the occult, which promised both vision and control, two rare commodities in the ruthless Hollywood machine. Mysticism had become Hollywood's unofficial religion. It wasn't staged, it wasn't ironic, it was deadly serious. And Manly P. Hall, with his commanding presence and encyclopedic intellect, became a kind of spiritual consigliere to the rising elite. Chapter 8. The Occult and the Movie Stars. Hollywood had already been courting the supernatural. Seances, mediums, yogis, and metaphysicians filled mansions from Beverly Hills to Silver Lake. But Hall had something the others didn't. He was sober, unlike many gurus of the time. He was intellectual, not theatrical. He spoke like a professor and a prophet at the same time. And he carried an aura of destiny, reinforced by the mythic childhood stories he let circulate without correction. The strange partnership with Bela Lugosi. Hollywood studios loved publicity stunts, but occasionally they stumbled on something bigger. When Hall visited the set of Black Friday, the press department staged a hypnotism demonstration with Bela Lugosi. Hall played along, quiet, serious, commanding. Lugosi, ever the showman, leaned into it. The stunt made headlines, and the studios joked that hypnotism should be used to force actors to learn lines and critics to give better reviews. The joke wasn't far from Hollywood's truth. The film world believed, desperately, that invisible forces could change their fate. Hollywood's obsession with metaphysics wasn't just eccentricity, it was survival strategy. Actors were terrified of violating the morals clauses baked into every major studio contract, the clauses that could end careers overnight. Some turned to metaphysical teachers for protection, clarity, and the illusion of control in a system that devoured people alive. Actor Dewey Martin admitted that he and many others trusted in these philosophies to keep their careers intact. They weren't fools. They were desperate. Hall wasn't a charlatan. He didn't promise fame or fortune, but he provided a psychological anchor in a world built on shifting sand. And that was worth everything. Chapter 9. The Secret Teachings. A book built like a temple. The Secret Teachings of All Ages wasn't just a book. It was a symbolic cathedral, a 14.5-pound artifact printed on heavy paper, bound like an ancient grimoire, stuffed with 54 color plates and over 200 black and white illustrations. Alchemy, Pythagorean mathematics, mystery cults, Kabbalah, Masonic rites, cosmic diagrams. It looked like a relic stolen from Alexandria, and it was expensive. $100 a copy during the 1920s. But the wealthy bought it. The educated devoured it. The curious worshipped it. Hall's mind on display. Behind the theatrical visuals was the real reason the book hit like a bomb. Hall could synthesize. He didn't just describe Egypt, Greece, or the Kabbalah. He tied them together into a single metaphysical worldview. A worldview in which wisdom was hidden in symbols, myths encoded psychological truths. The universe was structured, hierarchical, meaningful. Humanity wasn't alone. We were part of a vast, ancient lineage of seekers. This was the exact opposite of Freud's reductionism. It was the antidote to the psychic void of modernity. Young readers in the 1960s later described opening the book as feeling like entering King Tut's tomb. Celebrities took notice. U.S. General John Pershing, diplomats from France, Germany, Japan, and even the Crown Prince of Sweden, who personally received a special vellum-bound edition. Hall had become a symbolic ambassador of the occult. Chapter 10. The Lectures. Hall as showman and sage. Hall didn't just write well. He performed. People filled auditoriums to watch the mystic sit in a throne-like chair, surrounded by a pool of light, wearing a dark, tailored suit. He would speak for exactly 90 minutes, never more, never less. He moved only slightly. His voice did the work. And then, without flourish, he would end with the same phrase. Well, that's about all for today, folks. He wasn't flamboyant. He wasn't theatrical. He was authoritative. He didn't act like someone who had ideas. He acted like someone who had answers. At 24, while lecturing non-stop, Hall wrote Lectures on Ancient Philosophy, 471 pages of rational metaphysics tempered with poetry and psychology. Essays on symbolic language, geometry, and cosmology. Articles comparing Eastern and Western mystery traditions, and the beginnings of later works on magic, ethics, and human nature. His ideas weren't always original, but the synthesis was. Hall wasn't a researcher. He was a collector of ideas, one who could weave them into a single narrative of meaning. That talent made him indispensable. Chapter 11. The flirtation with politics, race, and social theory. Hall was a product of his time, and he echoed the fashionable spiritualized eugenics of the early 20th century. He argued that birth control was necessary to prevent the multiplication of the mentally and physically unfit, claiming that reincarnating souls needed bodies of a fine organic quality. To modern ears, it sounds elitist at best and poisonous at worst. But this wasn't fringe in Hall's era. It was mainstream across science, psychology, and metaphysics. Blavatsky believed in racial karma. Jung flirted with archetypal racial theories. Theosophists built entire mythologies around root races. Hall absorbed these ideas and expanded on them. He linked black peoples to karmic remnants of ancient sins. He saw Native Americans and Orientals as Atlantean descendants weighed down by past arrogance. He believed the Aryan mind sought complexity, empire, and scientific dominance. These ideas were dangerous and influential. The 1951 Lectures on Racial Evolution. In the 1950s, Hall lectured on the sixth subrace of humanity, an emerging spiritual elite supposedly arising from the synthesis of American and British civilizations. Many listeners assumed Hall was describing himself. He denied it, but the belief lingered. His attitude toward minorities. Hall urged tolerance patronizingly. He compared oppressed minorities to adolescents experiencing growth pains and warned his Anglo audience that their role was paternalistic. They were the parents of modern mankind. It was a worldview steeped in natural hierarchy, typical of early 20th century mysticism and anthropology. He wasn't a modern progressive. He was unlike an esoteric Victorian with cosmic language. And like many in his time, he saw the world through an evolutionary ladder, one he fully believed humanity was climbing. Chapter 12. Founding the Philosophical Research Society. By the 1930s, Hall was no longer just a lecturer or author. He was an institution. In 1934, he founded the Philosophical Research Society, PRS, in Los Angeles, a non-profit meant to preserve the world's wisdom traditions, offer public lectures, and eventually build a school of philosophy. PRS became his temple, a place where scholars visited from around the world. Celebrities slipped into back entrances. Students browsed rare manuscripts. And Hall presided like a benevolent monarch over an empire of ideas. He lectured there for decades, from a throne-like chair crafted to resemble the seat of an ancient sage. Chapter 13. Hall as counselor to church and state. By mid-century, Hall had become a national voice. Newspapers quoted him on World War II, especially atomic weapons, UFOs, and Zen Buddhism, art and morality, the future of civilization. Heads of state consulted him quietly. Celebrities consulted him loudly. He had become the American Hermes Trismegistus, a messenger between worlds. Chapter 14. The post-war years. A prophet in an age of paranoia. After World War II, America entered an era of optimism on the surface and existential terror underneath. Hall sensed the psychological fractures widening beneath the polished suburban dream. He warned that societies collapse not from foreign invasion, but from internal moral and intellectual decay. His lectures grew darker, more urgent, more philosophical. The same man who once celebrated the cosmic dance of symbols now dissected the dangers of materialism, the emptiness of consumer culture, the rise of authoritarian thinking, the psychological fallout of nuclear fear, the manipulation of the masses through media. With Freud's ideas now mainstream, and Bernays' propaganda techniques weaponized by Madison Avenue and Washington alike, Hall saw civilization drifting into a hypnotic sleep. His critique was fierce. America was becoming spiritually illiterate. He warned that without an inner compass, a society becomes hypnotized by images, brands, and political illusions. In other words, Bernays' prophecy was coming true. Hall became a moral commentator, a cultural diagnostician who saw trends decades before others did. Chapter 15. The 1960s. A prophet rediscovered. In the 1960s, Hall was rediscovered by a new generation, one electrified by psychedelics, civil rights movements, anti-war protests, and a hunger for mystical alternatives to the rigid moral codes of their parents. Young seekers described opening the secret teachings of all ages as if discovering a hidden portal to meaning. Hall's work offered something neither religion nor science could, a map of reality that felt ancient, symbolic, and complete. He was sought out by celebrities in the counterculture genre who strove to distance themselves from peace and love and hippie naivety. Artists, musicians, academics, and would-be mystics made pilgrimages to the Philosophical Research Society, PRS. Hall did not cultivate a guru's aura. No chanting, no robes, no incense, no psychedelic messianism. And because he wasn't a guru, he became more trusted than the ones who were. He was calm, measured, intellectual, and, most importantly, unshakably sane in a decade full of people losing their minds in pursuit of enlightenment. Hall provided structure where the counterculture craved chaos. Chapter 16. Marriage, Betrayal, and the Cost of Being a Symbol. Hall married late in life. Marie Bauer Hall, eccentric, volatile, brilliant, believed she had uncovered a secret encoded in the stones of the early Jamestown settlement. She wrote frantic letters to the National Park Service, convinced they refused to excavate proof of a lost treasure and a mystical revelation. Hall, ever the diplomat of the strange, supported her publicly, while privately walking a line between encouragement and quiet concern. Marriage brought companionship, but it also brought chaos. Marie was fiercely protective of Hall, suspicious of many around him, and prone to extreme emotional swings. PRS staff tiptoed around her. Students whispered about her temper. Hall seemed torn between loyalty and exhaustion. His personal life was beginning to feel like one of the allegorical dramas he analyzed, full of tests, illusions, and karmic entanglements. Chapter 17. The Great Shift from Mystic to Moralist. By the 1970s, Hall's tone changed again. He became more conservative, not politically, but culturally. He lamented the decline of ethics, the erosion of family structure, the loss of craftsmanship, the collapse of classical education, and the invasion of what he saw as cultural noise. He warned that the new generation was drowning in distractions and novelty, mistaking stimulation for wisdom. A student once quoted him as saying, "Modern life is a conspiracy against contemplation." It was classic Hall, compact, poetic, a diagnosis disguised as a proverb. He spoke less about Atlantis and more about responsibility, less about mythic races and more about personal character, less about karmic cycles and more about integrity. Age had made him gentler, though his fundamental worldview remained hierarchical and deeply shaped by his early mystical sources. But even as he mellowed, shadows gathered around him. Chapter 18. The Inner Circle and the Rumblings of Trouble. As Hall grew older, he became increasingly reliant on a small group of advisors, assistants, and caretakers. Some were loyal, others were opportunists, smelling blood in the water. PRS, once a vibrant center of learning, became a battleground of egos, financial disputes, and ideological conflicts. Trustees argued about the direction of the institution. Staff members whispered that new friends were isolating Hall. Visitors noticed Hall seemed frailer, quieter, and sometimes uncertain about who truly served his interests. Money went missing. Documents vanished. Property changed hands under suspicious circumstances. Hall's empire of wisdom was becoming a trap. Chapter 19. The Final Lectures. A Master Looking Back. Into his 80s, Hall still lectured, slowly, but with undiminished clarity. His voice had softened, but the fire remained. He spoke about forgiveness, humility, and the meaning of death. He revisited ancient myths, not as cosmic blueprints, but as psychological truths. He was no longer the young prophet unveiling mysteries. He was an elder explaining how to die well. In one of his final public talks, he said, "Wisdom is the ability to live without fear." For a man who had spent a lifetime mapping cosmic structures, this was shockingly simple and profoundly human. Chapter 20. The Death of Manly Palmer Hall. Mystery, Shadow, and Rumor. Hall died in 1990 under circumstances that remain controversial. He was found slumped in the back seat of his car, strangely placed, dressed in heavy clothing despite warm weather, and positioned in a way that suggested he had been moved after death. His body showed signs of neglect, dehydration, and possible mistreatment. Rumors swirled for years. Was he drugged, neglected, manipulated for control of PRS assets, moved after death to stage the scene? No definitive answers ever surfaced, only suspicions and the quiet, unsettling sense that a man who spent his life decoding mysteries became one in death. Chapter 21. The Legacy. What Manly P has left behind. Hall's legacy is contradictory, profound, and enduring. A vast intellectual archive, 33 books, thousands of lectures, countless essays, a lifetime of thought preserved in the PRS archives, symbolic keys, philosophical frameworks, and comparative studies that continue to influence. No one bridged East and West, ancient and modern, psychological and mythical as effectively as Hall. He became the unofficial metaphysical ambassador of the 20th century. Today, Hall is cited again, everywhere. Chapter 22. The Man Behind the Myth. Ultimately, Manly P. Hall was not a saint or a fraud. He was not a mystic sage descended from Atlantis. He was not a prophet in the biblical sense. He was a brilliant, lonely, fatherless boy who wandered the world with a grandmother who loved him fiercely, filling his imagination with stories, symbols, and the power of ideas. He turned that fractured childhood into a monumental life's work. He built a worldview that helped millions navigate chaos. He became the philosopher America didn't know it needed, and he did it without a college degree, without a pedigree, and without any legitimate institutional authority. He did it with a mind sharpened by curiosity and a heart hungry for meaning. In an age of noise, Manly Palmer Hall offered signal. In an age of anxiety, he offered myth. In an age of propaganda, he offered perspective. In an age of fragmentation, he offered synthesis. He was a map maker of the invisible. And whether you embrace his teachings, critique them, or simply study them as cultural artifacts, one thing is undeniable. Manly P. Hall left a mark on the American psyche that will not fade. If this journey into the life and mind of Manly Palmer Hall opened your eyes, if it made you question what wisdom really means, or if it simply reminded you that the world is bigger, stranger, and more symbolic than we're taught to believe, then don't let the exploration stop here. Subscribe for deeper dives into hidden history, lost knowledge, and the thinkers who shaped our world behind the scenes. Share this video with anyone who's ready to think beyond the surface.